You didn't believe anything that I said. When they came, you were not prepared. Then it all fell right on your head. And now you're lying in your bed. You've got yourself in a rabbit hole. You're trapped 'cause you did not let go. You took that bait and now...
Hey guys, it's Carrie Walker with Alice Eats the Apple. Okay, today's show is going to be really fun and intriguing and full of great information. We are discussing and dissecting and diving into topics such as time travel, reality shifts, the Mandela effect, and who better to do that with than Miss Cynthia Sue Larson. So hello, first of all.
Hello. Oh, so good to see you, Carrie.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much for being here with us.
My pleasure. I'm excited too.
Okay, so your background is in, I can't ever say that word. Starts with a P.
Well, physics. Yes, I studied physics, including quantum physics at UC Berkeley. Got my degree there, and had the pleasure to work with some great physicists since that time that I've graduated, because I got a bachelor's degree, but ever since I've been staying involved with some of the top quantum physics researchers, some of the best in the world, some of my favorites who are currently working at UC Berkeley, who are doing some of the cutting edge research would be physicists like Yasunori Nomura, and he has co-authored a paper with Dr. Alan Guth, who won that huge grant award for having done the work that he did on the Big Bang and the super acceleration at the time of the Big Bang. But I've also worked with the hippies who saved physics. There's some of them are my best friends, such as Fred Alan Wolf and George Weissman and Henry Stapp. You know, Henry, he doesn't throw himself in there with the hippies who saved physics. I don't think he thinks of himself as a hippie, but he did work. He's done some amazing research. He writes beautiful books, and he's one of our top researchers as well. So. Yeah, I love to stay current with all that.
Well, and you've written 6 books, and
yes.
You have kids, and you have your PhD in divinity. And I mean, I look at you as sort of the spot where the spiritual meets science. It's that seems to be like that place that you live. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, I think that's fair. I think that's a good way to put it. They're so different because science and spirituality, they have to focus on very different things. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. So, you know, you might think you can just bring them together, but it's almost like matter and antimatter or yin and yang. They'll be side by side, but they're never, ever, ever going to be all exactly together that we can comprehend. So I like to dance on that edge, but it's very much like the yin yang symbol itself. I think that's where I like to be. You're right.
Well, that is I live with a man that we've been together now 20 years, and he is this engineer, IP attorney. He's very, very grounded, which I've always said he grounds me because I'm up here and he's grounded. And so just last night we were talking about your work, and we were talking about reality shifts and the Mandela effect. And he said, no, honey, he said, it's just how you recall it. And our minds play tricks on us. And it's like, no, not necessarily. And I'll give you that, but it is anyway. So he and I are he always looks for the reason for things. And I always say, no, there's some magic to this. Let's leave room. I always tell my kids that, my boys, it's like, do your research, I think education is huge, but also leave room for that space where anything can happen.
Absolutely. My father is a civil engineer, retired now, and he and I like to talk about physics. And over the years, I think originally he was very much in that position, that state of mind where your husband currently is. But what happens if you live close, for my father to witness what's going on for me and to see these things firsthand, it will change a person's point of view. I mean, for me, it's very obvious. Things are happening that are outside the realm of what we have been taught, in terms of like things like even the moving finger writes and having writ moves on, nor all your piety nor wit can change even half a line of it. You know, that's Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, and we tend to take that for gospel. I know that's a very Eastern concept, but so many people think that's the way it is. But to witness some of the things happening around me, I mean, for me to witness it, I cannot hang on to that old materialist viewpoint anymore, that things is just mistaken memory. That doesn't fly when I've seen what I've seen. It doesn't work anymore. Well, when you're an experiencer inside the experience and you've seen too many things, at some point it's not viable anymore to simply write all of that off that way.
Well, and I think that's because you know what you know, and you're right at the beginning. So to go back, what we're talking about is basically the shifts that happen. Let's say I put this glass right here, and I know it's there. I put it there, no one else in the home, and I come back and it's over there. I mean, that's a pretty easy one. Or my ID. I lost my driver's license in my wallet, but I have kids. I mean, at the time, I mean, they'd go through your stuff sometimes. Yeah. So I thought, okay, I'll find it. And I look months. I didn't have that thing. Not really good, I guess, to do that, to drive without your driver's license. But for 2 months, I didn't have it. So we were getting ready to go on a trip. And I thought, I really need to go back. I had dug through my wallet how many times? I don't know. And I go back, it's right there. And it's like, thank you guys. Yes. And you have some phenomenal ones. And then, of course, we've all heard about Mandela effect. What's weird is that I was actually there in South Africa right before he died, and they were sort of on watch. Like, they knew he was sick, and they knew that he was about to leave. And I thought he had died. But then you just think, well, maybe I misread that, or someone said something about that. So when that came into my awareness, just that this phenomena existed, I started researching everything. And we've all heard about the sex in the city versus and the city, or the Berenstain Bears. And why do you think they happen? I don't know. And I ask that with an idea in mind, because it seems like the veil is getting thinner and we're becoming more aware. And so I don't know if that plays, somehow I think that may play into it.
I do. I think we're hitting a tipping point of our human collective consciousness, that people are becoming increasingly aware that we are the cause. Like when you say the question, why? In my book, Reality Shifts, When Consciousness Changes the Physical World, I explain, well, the answer to the question, why? Why is this happening? Why are these reality shifts, these Mandela effects occurring? The answer is because. It's to become aware that we are the cause, that our thoughts, our feelings literally impact physical reality. We are doing that as the observer, which plays an important role in quantum physics. And we can no longer consider that quantum physics is, that what happens in the so-called quantum realm, like Ant-Man, they talk about a quantum realm. Yeah. There's no quantum realm. That's fantasy. The reality is so much weirder, so much weirder. We are in the quantum realm. This macroscopic reality also is the quantum realm. This is why I love the work of physicists like Dr. Yasunori Nomura, because he is a theoretical physicist working to put together the very large with the very small. And in my reality, when I wrote my book, Quantum Jumps, he did not exist. So then I went to see a showing of the movie Particle Fever at UC Berkeley. There was a panel of the physicists who were involved at the Large Hadron Collider. And before they showed up, their name tags were on a table. I saw Yasunori Nomura's name there. I was thrilled because I'd been reading all his papers. I'd written the book Quantum Jumps. But then I realized, wow, he didn't exist when I wrote that book. He didn't exist because I would have referenced all of his papers. He's now one of the top researchers that I definitely would have been mentioning. So I always talk about him. I show slides from his papers when I give talks. It's just incredible. So going back to your question, like what's going on? It's because we are the cause. It's very simple. And it goes back to the perennial traditions of all the religions, all the spiritual traditions, including Tibetan Buddhism, including indigenous native spirituality. This is across the board on every continent, It's always been taught, including Christianity. Jesus talked about these things. This is very deep. It's just that what you are thinking and how you are feeling, this is why it's so important to have a pure heart and to see the world in this moment of now, like a child, because those are the people that will inherit the earth, truly. Yeah.
And to not snuff out that light, not to tell them no. I mean, to me, and I think you have this to such a large degree. You're so curious. It's just curiosity, and it just takes you further and further in a joyous state. And so, but some people on the spirit side would say, like, let's say, for example, my ID, or the fact that you didn't know he existed. They would say that it's either your higher self or your angels moved it to mess with you. Or what do you say to that, to the idea that it's more of a spiritual component that's still outside of us, though, right?
I think you're getting to the core of it, because when we think we know what we're talking about when we say I think that's that drives everything, because our self-identity is in fact exactly what's creating all of this. You might call it drama in your life. The events that you go through, repeating circumstances in each of our personal lives when we wonder, why am I dealing with this again? I thought I went through it before. And your friends might even tell you, like, well, don't you know? Can't you see it? You're in the same loop, But we can't see it when we're in it. But then as you grow, as you learn, your identity gets a little bigger. And you start getting in touch through spirituality with what you might call your eternal self, your soul, your spirit, your large self. And when you do, then you start seeing that some of those things that seem like fate or destiny, it's very much like your high self saying you can come along nicely, or you can come along, but you're going to be learning this. So
right. We're going to thunk you on the head, and they do get louder and louder until you don't have a choice. And I feel like there's sort of these signposts. There are things, and you discuss this in reality shifts, how you will know the people that you need to pay attention to, like a spouse, or really a spouse kind of comes to mind.
Yeah, I've had some amazing experiences. You must be thinking about that time I was in a bookstore and I just was following a fragrance around the bookstore.
Lavender.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing. I know. So when you're open to these experiences, I think that's the key. When people know anybody can have these experiences. But for me, I've had a couple of amazing bookstore experiences. One of them, I was in this bookstore and I smelled like this beautiful fragrance. It smelled like fresh flowers, like really floral, like it was a bouquet of lavender. And I'm looking around like, where could that be coming from? This is a bookstore I'd shopped at many times, and it did not smell floral or fragrant. Maybe musty might have been the word. Some of the books were a little older, but not fragrant, not in a good way. And I thought, well, what's going on? And I looked around and I just saw there was a gentleman nearby. And I looked at him like, like, would he wear lavender? I don't think so. And I kind of get a little closer to catch a whiff, like, no, it's not him. And so it was kind of funny, because I could sort of feel like the smell was stronger in some places. And so I'm following it because it gets very strong. I'm going around a corner, do a U-turn, go down another, come back the way I'd come in on the other side of a row of books. And then it's getting stronger and stronger. I could smell this lavender so powerfully, so beautifully. It was like there were flowers right in front of me. And then as I'm reaching, like, is this a book? Is this a sign? What's going on here? And I pull out a book, and now it's super strong. I pull out the book. It's a book about unicorns. I'm like, really? I open it just to a random page, and I read the first thing that I can see in the book. And it was something about how the unicorn's favorite fragrance or flower is lavender. And I'm like, whoa.
Oh, that's so, but like, I look at that and I think, how? You're like, something.
Yeah, the stuff that happens to me. This is what I meant by I can't dismiss this. I can't say this is not happening. No. Well, I've actually done that, and things got really, really crazy. I mean, if you think this is crazy, it just goes berserk if I try to deny it. So if I want to see epic levels of, it's almost like it's crazy. Like things hitting a window when there's nobody out there and no wind, and just really strange psychokinetic effects, it would be for me. I can provoke those just by trying to deny that any of that's real.
I challenge you to be real.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it because it unleashes this epic weirdness.
So have you ever, I asked certain people this question. Have you ever seen the guy in the trench coat and the bowler hat?
Yeah, I see things in the periphery of my vision, but not that particularly. I've seen little spirit beings. I've seen, I guess you could call them ghosts or dead people. I've seen extraterrestrials. I have seen things like elves, things that are like little people, fairies, garden spirits, diva spirits inside of trees, inside of the hills. I see all those things, but I've not seen the bowler hat guy.
The bowler hat guy. I was just wondering. I've seen him. I saw him when I was a kid, and
wow.
I
What was it? So when did it happen?
I was probably 8 or 9, and we lived out in the country. It was a full moon, and I'm blind as a bat, and it didn't occur to me at the time. And I always would wake up with my head at the wrong, like where my feet are, and my bed was up against the wall with 2 windows. And I look outside and I look down and I see this man, and he's wearing a hat and he has a trench coat, and he's looking, deadlock eyes at me. And I just remember I just froze because I thought, okay, I don't want him to see me. It freaked me out. And so then I thought, did I really remember that? And so I went back and asked my mom. She said, I do remember that, because I was concerned that there was someone around the house.
Oh, she saw him too.
No, she didn't see him. But she said that the next morning I had said something to her about seeing a man. And so, and I've Googled it, and people have all the, this dark stuff around it. I didn't take it that way. I take it he was either a watcher or someone just, it triggered, or someone that just sort of checked in to see how I was. And, and I've randomly asked people that, and I think I've had like 3 or 4 yeses. So it's really interesting. And I was just wondering if you had seen him.
Fascinating.
I know.
Well, I see all this other stuff, like I see angels and all this other stuff, but I haven't not yet seen that. Doesn't mean that doesn't happen. It's just like, it's curious. I love stuff like that.
I do too. And just to get the answers. And I don't know that we necessarily get them on this side, but there's a reason for it. Like there really is a reason that the intent for that person to be there was there. So I want to talk about you being on the inside of a Mandela effect.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Alive again.
Yeah, this is really amazing.
Yes.
This is the most recent development, just this year, 2019, in case people see this later. But, I don't know if you want to start talking about it. Or
Well, I know that, okay, so you received an email from a fella, okay, backing up. So we find out that these different people have died, and then you research it, or all of a sudden they come back. And so there is a reality shift where either collectively, so many of us want them back. Maybe that's why everybody sees Elvis, no, but they want him back, or that they either come back, or we've hopped timelines and we're on a different timeline. So then someone reached out to you recently and said that he lived in a world where you had crossed.
That's right. So I can read. I've got this right in front of me in case this came up, and I thought it would, because this is like the biggest news recently for me. I've not seen anything like this. So yes, so I got an email. I can read the beginning of it. Don't want to read the whole thing, but it's from somebody I've never heard from before, and he says, "Hi Cynthia, I have an unusual story to tell you in regard to the Mandela effect. My name is Steve Boucher, and I'm from St. Catharines, Ontario. I'm 63. I have had several occurrences of the Mandela effect in my life over the years, but none like the most recent one. I watched your interview with Regina Meredith on Gaia TV and have been a fan of your work for a while now. Shortly after the interview with Regina, I decided to visit your Facebook page to learn more. Upon arriving at your Facebook page, I was greeted with a message from your husband stating that he regretted to inform us that you had passed away and that you had been ill for quite a while. I was shocked to read this news and immediately responded offering my condolences. I remember feeling this great sadness come over me as I had very much enjoyed your work. A month or so later, I noticed a new video of yours on YouTube and was amazed to see that it was a recent video. Then I started to notice more recent videos popping up on YouTube. It didn't take me long to realize that you were still alive. I realized then that I must have shifted to a different timeline in which you had not passed away. I knew then that I had to write to you and tell you the story, as strange as it sounds. I'm grateful to have shifted to a timeline in which you are alive and continuing to bring videos to the public about the Mandela effect and time shifting. Hope you don't think I'm crazy. I just had to tell you. So then we had a back and forth, in which I was able to ascertain what was so interesting for me receiving this. I should tell you, when I got that, I thought, you know what? Not only is he not crazy, but I'm starting to wonder, like, when was this time frame? Because I'd been on Regina Meredith's interview show on Gaia TV twice, and so I wrote to him, found out I didn't give him any information about that I had actually been really sick. Like, wow, I just wanted to know, like, okay, tell me more. So, he did tell me more. He said, yes, it was the first interview with Regina. It was broadcast first week of January 2017. And I had actually, in my reality, been extremely sick all of December 2016 into January, actually into February. I was so sick, it was going into pneumonia. It was a respiratory infection. It was getting worse and worse. And it was to the point I told my husband, my parents, my daughters, this just about killed me. Once I started coming out of it, I said, I almost died. And I did quit doing videos from November 2016 to April 2017. What this gentleman's telling me, though, is right in that time period, and this would place it, he would have seen my death about February or March of 2017. That's spot on. And that would have been an illness of December, all of January, February, and then I would have died like in March or February or March. That's exactly right. And the way that the news would have been passed would have been my husband would have gone on my Facebook account. My husband doesn't use Facebook. He would go on my account and say, unfortunately, Cynthia's passed away. That is what would have happened. And this is not the only person that wrote to me. A few other people, once I mentioned this had happened, a few others said, I saw that too. And a couple more said, I saw a tribute on YouTube by Moneybag73. And so we're getting all kinds, and that could have happened too, because Moneybags is a wonderful reporter of the Mandela effect, and he does a lot of videos. We had been on a panel together, and so it would have been like we would have been on a panel together, but instead of that, I would have died, and he might have done a show about it. Yes, so it all makes sense. It totally dovetails. Again, like, why would people just write to me out of the blue and say that with the exact right date, the right cause of death, the right way it would have been reported, both on Facebook with my husband going on my account, which he never does because he doesn't use Facebook, but he would do it just to say, you guys, you might want to stop emailing and phoning because bad news, Cynthia's died. Yeah. So it's completely logical. It totally makes sense. And so this is the kind of thing that even engineers might just stop and say, okay, can't explain that under any normal, how can you explain this? Why would some random person write to me and say this? No. And why would other people say, I saw that too?
Well, and so how did you internalize that? How did you process that?
Well, because I really, it's very interesting because right now I'm actually in my life going through some of the same issues that emotionally had me feeling weak at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. So now it's round 2, layers of the onion. I'm dealing with my emotional stuff, that's right. But this time I'm coming in strong and I'm saying, you know what? I'm fearless. Last time I was blindsided. I felt betrayed. I felt like a loved one had done something that, why would they do that? And it really knocked me sideways. That weakened my health. Now I'm realizing people do what they do. They're doing their best. And that's between them and source. And it's not my thing. So this is my personal life. And because of stresses and issues in my personal life, that's real. I'm being honest. And I'm saying that's how I got so sick. That is because that illness often is a response to our just feeling depleted or, just fearful. I think fearful is the key word for me. That's what I was going through. Just feeling like, how could there be this huge betrayal? How could this have happened with someone that I trusted? How could they do that? And I was sort of fixated on those questions rather than realizing, they're doing their best. And I can't be the one to say that that's not their best. That's between them and spirit, between them and God, And that's where I am. So I don't, without going into all the particulars, because that's
no. That's no. But it feels like it. So recently, it feels like a lot of these patterns have come up for us to, at least for me to look at within myself. And it's what I was sharing with you before. It's an interesting, because we kind of rock along and we do still's got a groove, and we're, and all of a sudden something happens where it becomes internal, and it's like it casts us back to, for me, to almost a teenager or a young, it's like this piece of me needs to be retrieved. But it does knock you to your knees in order to make you stop and really see that and become vulnerable and strip it all away. And I think it does wear our immune systems down.
It does. But the timing of this email from Steve Boucher and the timing of what was happening when I almost died is perfect, because I'm emotionally revisiting that whole, exactly the same things that I had looked at 2 years ago. Now I'm taking them on. It's financial stuff, it's legal stuff, it's all sorts of that, all that. And I'm just like, okay, I'll do it again this time, but this time with no fear. And like, this is an adventure, let's do it. And a whole different attitude. So these kids these days, they play computer games, they play all these, and often you get a chance to level up. It's like a level up. So 2 years ago, I freaked out, I regressed, I went back to, like you say, teenager. I was feeling fearful. Now I'm saying I'm feeling the same issues, like, okay, get another chance to deal with the same stuff. But this time I'm leveling up and I'm just being calm, being centered, not getting pulled off course by what someone did. It doesn't even matter what they did. It's irrelevant. All that matters is me and doing my best for God, for spirit, for everyone. And then everything's going to be fine. So that's how I actually have to walk my talk. That's what I'm telling you. So it's like, wow.
It's not always easy.
No.
No, it's not. But it is that. I think that for me, when I start seeing that, okay, this is for me, I'm not a victim of it, because it is. We are sort of programmed to be victims, and I think to step out of that role.
It's in all of our. It's called a victim or a drama triangle for a reason, because we love drama. We love to go to the movies, the plays. We like to read books, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, whatever. It's a drama. We love it. But then when it's happening in our life, it's like you said. You hit the nail on the head. We don't want to get caught in that, where we start feeling like I'm a victim, because that goes nowhere.
No.
And it's just a merry-go-round of
powerless. Well, it takes your power away, and it takes, because ideally you kind of kick butt and take names, and it's like, okay, we need to get this done and stop long enough to internalize it and to go through it and learn the lesson. But maybe that's the lesson. I always say that it's like I love the way you put it with the video games. We unfortunately have a lot of that in our house, but I always think of it as a corkscrew. And it's like, because I'll have people ask me, why I got that lesson. Why am I going through this again? Like, well, maybe you're going through it from a different angle, and they become smaller and smaller, and hopefully, and then you're done and you don't have to visit that again, but it's not pleasant. But yesterday, so your book, Reality Shifts.
Yes.
Did I say that right? Yeah. Amazing. I mean, it is, I have, and it's on Audible, so you can, I don't know, you really can't do more. You really can't do things and try to tune into it, because there's so much good stuff in there that you really have to kind of think about what you're saying. And it's so user friendly, and anyone can read it. But I think to focus on it and to really pay attention, you can go deeper and deeper. And if you allow this book to, and you have a lot of great books, this one, I don't know, there's this shift in the way, and it pulled me out of my funk I've been in. And I started looking at things going, no, wait a minute. And it's interesting. It was almost instant because I was sort of bogging down, and I haven't done a show in a while. Actually, I have 3. I just need to edit them and get them up. And I have not been happy with what I've been doing with it. Anyway, and all of a sudden my phone's starting to ring, and these people that are incredible, and I had no idea they even existed, emailing, but it was almost instant. I mean, this has been the last few days, and all of a sudden this is happening. So thank you for that. And thank you for this awareness. I mean, incredible.
I'm so happy to hear. Yes.
I'm glad. And you also have a radio show that you do bi-weekly.
Well, it's Living the Quantum Dream. It's on Dream Vision 7 radio network. So it comes out, I do a new show about once a month. And the latest one that's running right now, I think it's Russell Targ, and then it goes to Dean Radin, and I'll be talking with Rupert Sheldrake next. So it's extraordinary. And I talked with Lynn McTaggart about the Power of 8 previous to that.
The Power of 8, I don't think I know that one.
Oh, she's she wrote some great books, but her new thing is to show that healing actually can be conferred upon us when we are the conduit for healing others. And she's said that was a surprise to her, which to me, in my realities and my histories, that's not surprising. So that was interesting to hear that she was surprised, because when I had gone through some Reiki training, one of the things they mentioned early on is as a Reiki practitioner, you get the healing because you're the conduit. The energy flows through. So obviously, if you're praying for health of others, you'll get the benefit. So I thought that was common knowledge for the last 20 years. But for Lynn, it was news to her. And then she uses some of the Reiki symbols when she does her Power of 8 groups, where 5 to 8 people come together. They feel positive energy and good wishes for people that need specific assistance for their health. Often they're very sick, and there's no way that Western medicine can do anything. So it's just an opportunity for those people who are doing the prayers, the intercessory prayers, and good intentions. And you don't have to be of any religious specific faith. It seems like people can come together, and you can choose who you're working with as the group. And you can do this on the internet, so it doesn't matter if there's no one in your small community. You can find people to join together with, and then you can get the benefit as you're helping others.
Oh, that's beautiful. So it's like a spoke. There you are. I lost you for a minute. Well, I know that I've been in a world, and I'm getting kind of funny about it. This idea of the shift and how it related to 2012 and where we are in the cosmos and this 26,000 year cycle that we're in.
Right. And
my own personal evolution of it is that a lot of people are waiting for it, and it's external, and they're waiting for it to happen, and like putting your life on hold until this happens. And I've been to the new earth. I mean, it was before I woke up, and it was just an incredible dream that I went back into, and I got to ask questions, and they wanted to know if I knew where I was, and it was just beautiful. And that's when I realized that I think it's more of a when you raise your vibration and you're able to do a lot of healing on yourself, and you just start making that shift, maybe that's what the shift, that it's more, it's like you create your own world. I mean, you create this other world, and that's why maybe some people aren't in your world any longer. They could sit right next to you, yet you don't see them because you're not at the same vibration or frequency. So do you do a lot around the shift? I mean, are you intrigued by that too?
I'm pretty sure that's a central idea it's like I'm swimming in it. It's so much the water that I swim in that I can barely see it, because it's pretty much the nature of everything I'm doing, actually. So for me personally, I'm aware of it. I was aware of I think they call it the Baktun, the Mayans, when they were talking about the end of time, but it was sometimes misconstrued. Like you said, 2012 was more of a It's like the Happy New Year's. It's like you get there like, Happy New Year, we did it. And then people wonder, well, what happened? What changed? Some people notice it. Some people say, are you kidding me? That we got the Mandela effect and stuff like that. But I think it's sort of in the background because, like you said, if you're not at a certain level of frequency, you can't see the new Earth. You can't access that vibratory frequency. But I do believe we're at a tipping point. That's what I keep coming back to. I feel that that's part of my purpose here, is to help those who are on the front wave of helping ensure this tipping point occurs, that human consciousness collectively can come to that point where we can agree that just based on our thoughts, our feelings, we really are creating physical reality. This is real. This is not some hippy dippy, airy fairy new wave thing out of Berkeley, California. But it's way more than that. This is huge. It's actually the way quantum computers work. It's the way artificial intelligence will be working. It's giving people like Elon Musk and and Bill Gates and Stephen Hawking was concerned about what's going to happen, and what they're really concerned about is this. It's when artificial intelligence becomes aware, what's it going to do. But I like to look at the how good can it get side of things, to recognize, don't worry about that, because when humans learn how to, if you can call it play with reality, play with the future, play with the past, play with everything, then there's nothing to fear, because we're able to just work with the alignment of our head, our heart, our guts. When you're in alignment, this is the spiritual part, so that you're not wishing for something that's bad for you or others. This is where we need to mature and grow up as a species, as a race. When we reach that point of maturity, we can genuinely know with full good hearts that we're only wishing for what we absolutely need. We're not getting greedy. We're not doing things out of spite or resentment. We're on track. And when we do that, this is that raising the frequency. And we keep asking, how good can it get for ourselves? Then that's how good can I get? When we make that our reality, we're doing this for everyone, and we're so interconnected. So yeah, so I'm very much part of this 2012, this new Earth. But it's such, I don't talk about it much because it's the water I'm swimming in. It's pretty much exactly what I'm doing. So it's like so present. It's like the greatest thing that's happening that I don't really talk about it much. But yeah, it's very much what I'm doing.
I kept going back to reading and looking at a lot of your work. I kept going back to this idea, and I kept seeing a bicycle and how when the wheels go fast enough, you can see right through it. And yes. And I kept thinking, the veil seems to be thinning, and it seems that at some point we did need a guru, a priest. We did need someone to help us access the other side. But now, and I don't know, it just seems like now it's easier to access if you go within. So that's, I don't know where I'm going with that, but it is, I think the shift is, I'm kind of moving. I'm like you, it's I don't know. So I
think that's a good observation, and it answers a lot of people's questions that write to me and they say, why is this happening to me? I didn't ask for these Mandela effects. It's freaking me out. I hear from people who are specialists, such as an art history person wrote to me, very troubled by this. He said that art is changing. He said, just look at Adolf Hitler's paintings. They used to be horrible. Now they look good. A musician wrote to me and said, now there are new masterpieces, new orchestral compositions written by some of our masters that he said they never existed before. I've heard from someone working in the Pentagon who was just walking through that building. This is the Pentagon, U.S. military. I'm not going to name any names, but he was walking through that building. He ended up on a completely different floor at the other end of it. That building is huge. It's like football field huge. So he just went down a staircase. Like sometimes you see someone coming and think, I don't want to talk to that person. So he just ducked down the stairs, and it's like he ducked down into some other reality. It's the same building, but he's like on the other. It's got an inside and an outside of the Pentagon. You know where you are. There's the inside with the courtyard. The outside is the outside. He's on the other side on a different floor. That really freaked him out. Like, what happened? And so it's like, oh, this is worse than trying to avoid someone. I better get back up to wherever I just left.
I'm confused. I might get lost.
I've heard from people in England that work for, the House of Lords and stuff. I've heard from people. I don't usually, when they're that high level, then I'm not going to out them. I'm not going to say like, okay, because to me that's sacred. But I've heard from people who've seen the end of the world. They said everything blew up. I was still here, but I saw nuclear annihilation. I've heard from people, and I believe these are reputable accounts to me, because I'll see markers that show these are not crazy people. To me, based on their, the jobs they hold, their level of respect that society confers upon them, but they are not yet willing to step out and say, hey, I'm a general working in the Pentagon. I've seen something shocking. That's a little embarrassing. Or I'm working, I'm a very high level person, working in the United Kingdom or what have you. They're not stepping forward yet, but I think what's happening is just what you're describing. This is big. So it's like the wheels of the bicycle, everybody's starting to see through it. It's across the board, it's everywhere. We're all being affected. And it's a good thing.
It is a good thing. And I think that they don't know where to put it. They can't. And you ask that question, you ask, are you ready? How far do you want to go? And I'm like, I want to go, and not go, but how far, because the reality, our minds are, I watched a man one day at the zoo hold court all around him, and he was a homeless man. And he was talking to this person, talking to that person, really mad at that person. Then he's over here and he's going back and forth. And it was fascinating to watch, because in his mind, he had a table full of people. And so our minds, and I think that's probably where the fear comes in, is that, oh my, I'm losing it. And what's going to happen, and where will this lead me? But I kind of find that the more you resist it, like you were saying before,
right,
sometimes the more jarring it can be.
Right.
Versus just roll with it. But that's why they reach out to you, which thank goodness they do.
Well, they notice I'm grounded. I'm not spouting lots of conspiracy theories, because to me, when I look for what's going on with these Mandela effects, reality shifts, what I see is thousands of years of reports of these sorts of things happening. Even though we didn't have the internet, it would have been easier if we did, because then we could say, wow, this really has been happening for thousands of years. We don't have that. Instead, we've got more isolated cases, usually described by the shamans, by the yogi masters, the people that actually were meditating enough so that they knew for sure this is happening. Everyday people would just chalk it up to like what an engineer might attribute it to: mistaken memory, you're confused, you got things mixed up, you don't know what you're doing. But when a person is so focused that they are training their mind all the time, maybe martial arts, yoga, whatever, and they know they're trained to be the top level observer they can possibly be. Those people, those are reputable reports. And we've got reports going back thousands of years. So I consider this to be a very ancient phenomena. And what's happening is just what you're describing. There's this awakening happening. And more of us are seeing through the thinning of the veils.
So so you also did, I love your blog. And guys, if you want to check out her website, it's www.realityshifters.com. You can check out her books there, her blog. She links to everything. Her YouTube, she has a lot of stuff. Cynthia Sue Larson on YouTube. And they're short. That's what's so nice, is that they're bite-sized. And so you can catch a couple of them or one and really sort of think about it for the next couple of days. But that was so funny. I love it. I just learned I died. Okay, so your other one is I can't, for some reason, P's, the F sound. Physics experiment challenges objective reality.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that I had thought this was the biggest news story I'd ever seen until the one about me dying. So this has been a banner year.
Big year. You died. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. This is a news story I've been waiting for in science pretty much since I started reporting this phenomenon and observing it in the 1990s. It's more than 20 years for me now. But what's big? This is huge. I think this should have been on the front page of every newspaper. Should have been on TV. It should have been like, listen, guys, this is amazing.
What's up?
So it's I told you before that science and spirituality kind of go side by side. The reason for that is, I just want to talk about science a little bit. Science has to do with what we can measure. It's a very logical, meaning a very Boolean logic methodology, where usually there's a practice of recognizing that you'll have a hypothesis, meaning that you've got a theory, it's an idea, you want to test it, and then you create the conditions by which you can test that hypothesis to see if what happens is what you think is going to happen. And then you observe what occurs, and then it either proves or disproves the original hypothesis. This is the way science moves forward, very Boolean. And by the way, we're moving out of Boolean logic, we're moving into quantum logic, but that's a whole separate discussion. But that's science. For all these years, Western science has operated based on what you can measure, what's observable, what's recordable, what the theory is, whether we've proven or disproven it. It's really important to understand that. So now we're looking at science to take a look at some recent experiments. The experiment in question is called the most elegant experiment in all of science. It is in quantum physics. It's the double slit experiment. And so a lot of people's eyes blur and their mind goes foggy when they hear that. But don't, just hang in there. You can follow this.
Really break it down well.
Yeah, it's super simple. So the simple experiment has to do with, there's going to be a little photon emitter just over here going poop, and just shooting a little photon one at a time. Just shoots a little particle, which is going to end up on a screen over here. So it shoots a particle, lands on the screen, and quantum particles are recognized as being the fundamental building blocks of material reality. That means that you can't break it down any smaller than what it is. A photon, you can't break it down anything smaller than a photon. So it's like one little particle of light. They just shoot, poof, and it goes flying, and it hits the screen. It goes splat, like a little paintball splat right on the screen. So that's just the apparatus. We're going to add one more thing, and there's going to be, like, in between the emitter and the screen, there's going to be a couple of little slits. So it's like kind of like two little doorways in a barrier in between the emitter and the screen. The reason for that is because people notice that photons can either travel like waves going up and down, or they can travel like a particle and go splat. So what the scientists originally wanted to do with the two slits is to see, like, okay, let's see if we can notice which doorway, which slit this photon goes through. Well, if we'll put a little particle detector in one of the doorways, then we'll know for sure. So they do that. They can tell for sure, and it goes splat. It goes through two doorways, but because the particle detector detects for sure which doorway it just went through, maybe it's the right doorway this time, the little right slit, and it goes splat right over here. And I said, great, this is going great. We love this experiment. Now let's see what happens if we fire just one little particle and we don't have that particle detector, so we don't know where it goes. Let's do it that way. They turn off the particle detector, fire the photon, phew, and then what happens on the screen is they're seeing, it's very bizarre. It looks like there's waves, like when you throw two pebbles into a pond and all the ripples come out, and they interfere with each other constructively and destructively, so you get the waves and ripples and patterns going on. That's what they're seeing here, which means that one photon somehow went like a wave through both slits, interfered with itself. It's only one particle. It's indivisible. One particle, indivisible, just split itself and ended up there. Now that's just the original. I'm just describing the original bizarre double slit experiment. I have to explain that because it's going to get, the news story from this year is working with this experiment and taking it even weirder. I mean, that's plenty weird. I mean, this is very weird, and you can start to see how weird quantum physics is. It's out there. But this is epic, because what just got covered this year, and it's the biggest news story I think I've ever seen in the field of quantum physics, is that now, this is the work of scientists at the University of Edinburgh, Scotland, and a university in Austria, and Vienna, Austria. And what they were doing is setting up the same exact apparatus with the photons coming here. What they wanted to do is see what happens if you've got two observers, because it looks like with the original experiment, the observer is changing what happens. This is where the observer matters, and that's been freaking physicists out since 1900. So for 100 and 19 years now. People have been freaked out about this. But now it's weirder because now they've got two observers looking at the same exact apparatus, the same exact experiment. Those two observers watching this this year were able to notice at the exact same moment, at the exact same place, the exact same event, two different observations of what just happened. So with one observer, it's not clear that any decision was made whatsoever. It's kind of like it's in just probability wave. The other observer says, no, it made a decision. You know, it's definitely, that photon went through and went splat. So you've got two completely accurate, those are accurate observations according to our Western science. This is the breakthrough. It's like, this is crazy. So you can have two subjective realities that are both correct. What that does, it flies in the face of the underlying assumption of Western science that there's one objective reality, one truth, one set of historical facts that were always true, one reality for all of us. And this experiment says, nope.
I think it's that, and I think it's also, I am blown away with the idea that if I observe it, it changes. Because how do we know that? Because otherwise you're not observing it. So somehow they're able to record it, I guess, without being observed. So if two people are observing it and they're getting two different outcomes, then wouldn't it make sense? Do you think it's an intent? I mean, how is that? Is it the energetic, the person?
Yeah, I think there is and for these kinds of answers, now I would recommend people go to the Institute of Noetic Sciences, because it's the only place, the best place I currently know that's investigating these kinds of issues. That would be with Chief Scientist Dr. Dean Radin, and he writes amazing books about this topic. And that's why he'll be a guest on my show, Living the Quantum Dream, talking about his newest book, Real Magic. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, he is a top-level scientist, and the reason that I'm referring people there is because now, once you get into how does consciousness, what's this about intention? Your traditional Western scientists do not study intention. Maybe some psychology experiments might, but to really get into the ramifications here, that's where I would refer you to Institute of Noetic Sciences.
Well, and we're going into an election year.
Yes.
And that is something I get so frustrated with, is that I just remember, and I wrote this whole thing on this. My neighbor, lovely, love these people. Really, they're just incredible people. And I'm sitting back and I'm just watching how all of these signs are going up in everyone's yard, on either side of the aisle, and how people that otherwise get along beautifully, all of a sudden, based on that yard sign, are willing to throw down. And it upsets me, because no one is stopping and saying, why?
Right.
I think you're a lovely person. You must have your reasons. And I could actually learn something from you. But no, everyone kind of squares off and wants to defend their position. And so, we're all right. We're all right. I mean, and that's what this is saying, is that
Yes.
You don't have to, why can't we hold space for someone to be right also, even though their right looks different than your right? But
Exactly. And this is that higher vibrational thought. I mean, there you're talking something quite very high level, and it sounds great. And some people are willing to embrace that when it's not their life. But then as soon as it hits in their personal life, it's like, oops.
Absolutely. And then you slide down the hill. No, absolutely.
Oh, it's so easy to slide down the hill, and so easy to revert and get all worked up and fearful. That's just what just happened to me 2 years ago. And so that's what I meant by I'm walking my talk. And I can tell you it's not easy. I think as long as we're in a human body, it's going to be hard when it hits home. When it's in your life, when it's in your actual home. Wow, that's hard. So
it is.
I have a lot of empathy for people. I don't think I don't think some people are better than others. It's more like what you're describing, that we all need to get to that place to be able to listen, and with as little fear as possible. I think that's the goal. You'll know you're on track when you're able to do that. And when you can actually wish well for the person in addition to that, wow, then you're doing really well.
And then you have the next thing, and it's almost like it's an infinite stream of input, and so you can check that one off the box. Okay, well, I don't have to weigh in on Democrat versus Republican.
No.
Check that box off. And trying not to go into a hole, trying to just say, okay, I ignore all of it, because I'm not really sure that does it either, or maybe it does. I don't know. But I think that, but don't you think to some degree, you guys have heard this story, but you haven't. One day I was sitting in my backyard and it was late at night, and I live right smack dab in the center of Houston. So we maybe get 4 stars maybe at night. And I was laying there, and I've always wanted to know, why do we have to forget when we come in? What is this amnesia about? So I'm lying there and I'm sort of talking to my team, and I was like, oh my goodness, I get it. Because some people are born into moms and dads that really, help love them, nurture them. Some people don't. And we have to survive that. We have to kind of become them, because we're dependent on them for everything, right? So then we go off, like we're in their little sphere, and then we go off into our own sphere. Hopefully we are able to break off and become who we came to be. And we go through these trials and hurts and pains and all of this, and yet we still figure out how to fall in love and have children and love our children. And that's it right there. And I started to cry. It's like, it's love. It's going back to love. Like, how far away can we get and then find our way back? In a lot of people's worlds. And I started to cry, and I see this wink. I get a wink. I see this craft just kind of, and what they do for me is they look like stars that come in, and then they start to move around, and they're really cool. And it's like, you got it. And I think that's what it is. But we're here, and we're so contained, we're so cut off from each other, that to open yourself up to someone, I don't know. I just think that's part of the design of being human. Everything has to be contained. And on this side of the veil, we are not all one. I mean, we can access those points, I believe, where I can feel you, you can feel me, but it's not a natural state for most of us. That's a very long-winded way to say that.
Oh, I love it. And it gets back to that identity again, which is so important. And in my experience, even people talk about being all one, and I think it's an idea, but I think that's kind of like the level of God awareness and being God. And most of us are not there yet. Even when I'm between lives, I'm not there. I'm not being God. I'm very clear that I can be with God, but I'm not God. So oneness it's an experience God has. And we can share it, because, God or oneness or source or universe, whatever you want to call that, gives that to us. It will grant that to us, and that's heaven. That is heaven. It just feels like, wow, this is the best feeling in the world. But even when I'm between lives, I'm not God. I know that. I'm aware. What?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. No. Do you know you're in between lives? I've only experienced one of mine. Do you know that feeling?
Yeah, it's such a blissed out feeling, because my most recent past life was like 500 years in a nightmare future from here that some people thought would be paradise. It is not. So I was still recovering from that trauma in between lives before I came into this one. So I felt like I came in too soon, but I guess there was no mistake. I was supposed to remember the trauma from that future, so we don't go there. So that's really what I'm doing. But I've succeeded at that. Now it's just bonus time. It's like
I do see bonus time, and that is okay. So I was going to ask you. I had this vision, whatever it is, and let me know how we're doing on time. If you're okay on time.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
That's fine.
And they showed me, it's like I was sitting in this little chair over in the corner with a little light next to me, and it was in the dark, and a light, like a flashlight, would go by, and it's like, oh, there's more there. Oh, there it goes. Okay, fine. I'll just sit there. And then some point I reach over and I pull the little cord, and the light comes on. It's like, where am I? I'm in this huge like warehouse. It's just this cavernous space. And there are these kiosks, and they're like little control panels, and there are holographic scenes playing out at each panel. And the people that kind of oversaw the floor, they're like, oh, like they would look at me and say, nah, okay, she's still there. And all of a sudden, like, oh, good, she's here. She's awake. And so I wander over and I'm looking, and they're basically us, like our guides are sitting at the control panels just watching. And I said, well, can they get involved? And they said, good question, only if you ask. And they really don't intervene. You have to ask, or it has to be something egregious. And I mean, like just really life altering. And then I look up and I see, and that's when I know my visions aren't just a dream, is that it's like it's in 3D. It's like it's in 360. Like I can turn around and see all these different really cool things. And there are these fiber optics. That's what they look like. And they're above, and they're just like a spider web of just all these things. And they were talking about when you heal, I have chills, when you heal a timeline, you can heal it from this part forward and backwards, because there is no forward and backward. And so they were showing me all these different, how everything is connected, and how healing is so vital to our past and our future selves, generations, children, everybody. And so it's really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. I love that. I love the way that you describe it too. It feels so visceral. And I agree. Like when I have these when I have a dream that's more than a dream, then I know it. You can, like I describe in reality shifts, it's very much like lucid dreaming, being awake in the dream. And you can be awake in your life too. And just learning to be in that state of awareness and recognizing that even though we're limited by our human experience, which I thought you described brilliantly, is kind of like we're in these little containers just coming back to love. That's so perfect. I feel like that's happening too.
Well, and that's what they said. My team said that. I said, why, why the shift? I ask a lot of why questions, but why the shift? And they said, because it's time to take your seat at the table. That these, and I call them realms. I mean, I don't know if there's a better way. It's not just Earth. It's the experience that we experience from this space, whether it's in a different galaxy or it's our version of heaven. It's like, it's all connected somehow. And it's this, and they said that that there's an infant stage, and that's when you have the duality is like the thickest, and it's just real heavy. And yeah, there are those that kind of like to come in and play in this world that they don't necessarily feel good, but it's time to take our seat and to evolve. And I said, well, what's the point of evolving? And they said, well, then you can pop in and out, and you can do all these different things. And I can't imagine, but that does feel pretty good.
Yes, so. It is good. I think you're right about that too. And it also matches indigenous wisdom. Like, wrote an article for Parabola magazine about comes true, being hoped for. Again, I was following this idea that reality shifts, Mandela effect, all of that has been with us thousands of years. So when I wrote that article, I was looking at the Hopi indigenous people and the fact that they have this word Tunatia and Tunatiava, which means comes true, being hoped for. And they do talk about the evolution of humanity, that we're currently in the fifth world. We've actually been through the end of humans, have been through the end of the world about 4 times so far. We're coming to another one. You can tell it's happening and they indicate all the signs to look for. So I put that in the paper, and I also included some physics as well. It's kind of an interesting article because it gets into indigenous native wisdom, also basically UFOs and some extraterrestrial intervention that would occur at each point in time. And if you're a Bible scholar, you'll notice that the end of the world, the stories totally match a lot of the things, like the Great Flood was one of the most recent times. So the indigenous peoples and all of our spiritual traditions, they have a tremendous amount of overlap that is not commonly discussed. But I think when you look at all the clues, then you recognize there is something huge going on. And like you said, it's time for us to come to that table. It's time for us to, as the Hopi put it, keep our kopavi open, that it's the door, keep our hearts open, and then keep your crown chakra open as well. So you need to be able to be pure-hearted and really present, really listening. So you go past that drama. You don't want to be thinking you're a victim. You don't want to be a rescuer, because if you start thinking you're one of those two, you easily could end up being a persecutor and the so-called abuser. It's a merry-go-round. The only way off that merry-go-round is just to be in your heart, keep your third eye open and your crown chakra open, and see things truly as they are. So it's really about getting back to that pure-heartedness. And that is the key. Yeah.
That is, and you can feel, I feel that with you. I've always felt that with you. You can hear it in your voice. Yeah, I've always felt that about you.
Yeah.
And it's hard to stay aware though. It's hard. And I need to shift that, but it is. Can I ask
There will be, I think when you say it's hard, it's kind of like we keep getting pulled back into the drama, right? And we have people around us and the media and so forth insisting that these things we're supposed to care about having the most toys or having the most money or, power, prestige, all that stuff, all the stuff you can measure. Those measurables never make anybody happy. If you want to just ask yourself a question today, people listening, just ask yourself, okay, make a list of everything you can measure. That would be things like how much money you have in the bank, how your diplomas, your titles, whatever, all that stuff, all the stuff. And you just make a list of that. Places you've visited, I don't know, whatever. Everything you can measure and keep a list of. And then the unmeasurables, put that on the other side of the paper. And that would be everything like love, friendship, meaning, purpose, beauty, grace, peace, all those things. And put the things you can't measure. There's no way to measure them. There's no possible way to create an experiment about it. Not ever. Put that on the other side. And then just ask yourself, which ones really make you happy? And you might think it's the things that are the cars, the vacations, the money in the bank. But if you're honest about it, you'll see that's not really so. That's not it. It's really the unmeasurables that bring us the greatest joy, the greatest happiness.
And it's just a state. It's a state of being. And you know it when you see it, and you know it when you feel it.
Yeah.
And it is, yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to sign off. And thank you for spending the morning with me.
Oh, I'm so happy to. This has been awesome. I just love talking with you.
Thank you. I do too. And I hope we can do it again soon. And guys, go check out her website, seriously. And if you want to speak with her one-on-one, she does do life coaching, which I'm signing up for. And anyway, check you out because you have so much information and it's all beautiful. So
thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And you have a wonderful day. And guys, thank you for joining us. And I'll drop everything in her website and all ways you can talk with her and check her out. And that's it. So we'll catch you again. All right. Thank you for that.
Awesome.
Oh, that was really fun.